So, good day, everyone. We're here for another episode of the DVD show. So, for today, we have one of the best sports anchors and sports personalities here in the Philippines, and he's really one of the people I look up to in terms of sports media. So, I'll now welcome here to the DVD show, Sir Sev Sarmenta. Thank you for joining me here on my podcast.
Hello, nice to be here, Jago.
Yeah, so to start things off po, since you covered the game last night, the one I watched of Gilas and Lebanon, I wanted to ask your thoughts on the game since we unfortunately didn't win against them. What were your initial thoughts on the game?
Everything people are commenting about is probably uh, correct. We do have a team that has a lot of challenges, has not been together for a while. But to me, what is strikingly clear, is that when we send our young recruits to the UAAP and CAA, they really look so small and so um, uh, really body wise, really, really small compared to the behemoths of Asia and later on the rest of the world. So that's one of the concerns. So those of you and those of us who are thinking it might just be college players, young players, excuse me, Gilas cadets, maybe we have to reconsider and do some more planning, and we have to include the PBA players actually in the long.
Yeah, so do you still think may chance po ba na maging competitive sa World Cup? Kasi yun yung intention from the beginning, di ba? Nagka-pool pa dati na hindi nga natuloy. Pero now, we still have like a year.
Well, it depends on, excuse me, our objectives, the World Cup, no, which we are hosting together with Indonesia as well as Japan. I think, ano ba ang dream natin? Ano ba ang goal natin? Kasi kailangan ma-set yung goal. Is it make it to the final round, to the final game? Maybe that's a little too far-fetched. But I think more than anything else, we want a decent showing na hindi naman tayo tatambakan. Siyempre tayo ang host. We don't want to come up with a team that's not very competitive. Given that the fans will come out in big numbers, the Filipinos will support their team and most likely other teams as well because we know our basketball, and so Filipinos will find teams that they like aside from the U.S. team. There will be teams. I'm sure they will like Slovenia. If Slovenia makes it, they'll like Serbia as well. Marunong ang basketball fans ng Filipino. They know how to watch. So, what do we want? Do we want a competitive team? How long do we need to prepare it? Who are the players in our neighborhood that should be part of it? How much time should we devote? How much of a sacrifice did the PBA make in terms of not having a tournament so that that team can prepare for next year? So many questions. Unfortunately, the pandemic messing up all our plans, and so no no point in crying over what we missed. Then we just work on what is in front of us. It's not an easy road. I'm sure there are a ton of challenges ahead for all of us.
Yeah, hopefully, like as a basketball fan po, yeah, I want them to be competitive and syempre mas gusto ko po yung may parang program din pero nga hindi nahirapan din may implement kasi daming hurdles na kailangan lampasan eh. So, hopefully, magyari rin yun in the future. I mean, I'm not hopeless about it. So, sana nga magkaroon ng magkaroon ng ganong program for the national team. Pero how about naman po for you? You have other jobs then like with Signal or with one sport. How do you like now juggle it now? You cover also other sports. Like I saw you cover PBA, of course everyone knows, but you cover volleyball na rin and even the other sports na binabroadcast abroad.
Well, I try to maintain a decent schedule with enough breaks in between kasi mahirap din. Unless it's the SEA Games, the Olympics, or the Asian Games where you work every day. I try to put a few gaps in between. Marami naman kami doon sa grupo. So, when if I'm not doing basketball, I'll do one volleyball. Just enough for the week to be able to participate and earn a little.
Yeah, so how do you ano po, how do you do you have like freedom on how you choose the games on what you're gonna cover ganun?
there are two sides to it, no? They ask us, the producers ask us for our available dates. There are certain
Mm,
games that we, the producers, think that we are appropriate or the right person
mm,
for the job. Like last night, I had to do a game in the PBA first game, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Then I had to go to the studio in TV5 to do that Gilas game last night. So depende, no? Depende sa mga producers. And if I'm available, I'll do it. If it's a sport that I know, I'll do it. It's a sport that I'm rather familiar with, or I can learn about it with some basic knowledge about it. Like I did the recent Asian badminton coverage, but I sabi ko si producers, as long as I have a good analyst, and I'm in a good place because somebody will guide me also.
yeah, I like that. I like how you actually approach covering sports because yeah, you try other sports. Na even me, like I want to know more about other sports. Even if I watch a lot of sports po, pero like kumaring volleyball league na yung mga ibang bansa, like I'm not really familiar with those players yet or those teams. So yeah, that's the goal. Or even yung Olympics nga or Sea Games, like when you cover other sports, that's something I'd want to also do in the future. Kaya yun, sana mangyari din. Pero to talk about the next part of the interview, I wanted to ask like I read last night that you started in 1986 with your broadcasting career. So maybe you could talk a bit about how your passion for sports started and where your broadcasting career started. And
Um, I worked in advertising and public relations for a long time before my real broadcasting career started. From 78 to 82, I was an active voiceover talent and producer of commercials, events, and audiovisual presentations. Kuminsan pag nag-edit kami, we would watch the PBA and then we'd turn off the sound and then I'd mess around with it, imitating Joe Cantada's voice. Joe Cantada, of course, the legendary broadcaster. Then one day, one of the our directors said, "You're always fooling around. Why don't you audition with Vintage?" Uh, it's a question of timing and where you are at sino kasabay mo. I auditioned. I passed. They said the possibility of me doing television was there, but a more senior member decided not to go to the States, to go attention, and I was uh, brought over to radio, which was a good move because radio is a great place to start to learn how to call games, to learn from your mistakes, to learn how to interact with the audience. Although before, I already had a little experience DJing a radio program, but not full time. So I learned for a long time until 1987, 88, when they started uh, exposing me more and more on television to give me more training. And that's where it all started. And then one job followed another, and the learning just continued.
yeah. And even if you've been on the industry or you've been with that job for a long time, like how do you still develop the interest level and the continuous approach of learning, wanting to learn and the desire to yeah, learn from these other sports na sinasabi nyo nga po na minsan siguro yung iba hindi naman nila kaya i-cover yun pero ikaw you're willing to still learn from it.
I try. I don't know all of them. The kuminsan needed. Oh, let's start with those that we know. Basketball, I played it since I was young, growing up in Santa Cruz, Manila, all the way sa ambition na maging varsity player, hindi gaya mo, you made it. But you come to a realization in high school, sa Ateneo, when you realize, boy, there are so many taller guys, so many better guys than you.
Yeah,
And you
yun
come
nga.
to the conclusion, pang intrams ka lang. So, yeah,
Mm.
pang intrams, pang street leagues, I've always played the game. Ganun din with volleyball. I was the manager of our volleyball team in high school. Um, and when kulang ng pairs, I was told by the coach, pumasok ka, maglaro ka. Because sa volleyball, you need 12 players to complete the scrimmage. So, those are the two sports that I would think na medyo master ko. Um, and the learning continues, even nowadays. I'm sure you watch a ton of NBA.
Yeah.
Kung minsan, I'm not watching astutely and deep into it. I will let the sound just play while doing other.
Mm.
I listen to Mike Breen and Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. Find different ways of saying things. Nowadays, ang natututunan ko, I'm listening to a lot of the WNBA female announcers, and they're very good. They have
Yeah.
different ways of saying and calling the game, and it's nice to discover new ways of saying things. Naman, pagka nagpunta ka naman sa multi-sports events, also basketball, volleyball, hindi problema yan. My first international event, gulat ko nga first international event ko was right away the Olympics in 1998. So Cantada couldn't go because he was sick, so I stepped in. So, walang problema, basketball and volleyball. But I was forced to learn other sports also. Um,
Yeah.
Track and field, then later on, sunod-sunod na yung Asian Games, SEA Games. We sometimes have to do it because nobody else is available to do it. Um,
Yeah.
of late, I've been lucky. I've been able to learn nung kinuha ako ng tinatawag na Dentsu Broadcasting, which is an international sports content provider in the Asian region. I've learned handball, equestrian, of late, badminton, table tennis, gymnastics. Hindi na ako natatakot to try it because I'm not an expert in it, but I can hold my water, I guess, for a full coverage of gymnastics. So the learning that never stops, no? The learning continues because the minute you say, I know, oh, maybe we should stop in this career, which is very challenging because staying on the air for 2 hours is quite a challenge.
Yeah. That's why I like the way you continue to evolve and you wouldn't stop welcoming new challenges as a broadcaster. But I'm also curious since you've been covering for many years now. And yesterday, like I wasn't watching intently the Blackwater Rain or Shine game, but then when I hear that you would the way you'd cover the game is different na para mas exciting na yung game like the fourth quarter. So I'm curious to see like with you like did you always have that style of covering or did it change then from the based on the fans or the generation that you're covering? How did you evolve or change also the style?
Very good question. When I started in radio, you cover radio basketball games differently. No? You're more conscious of possessions, you're more conscious of score, time, fouls. So that was good training, which I
Yeah.
carry over to this day. I have no problem with the analyst being the star, whether it's Benito, Andy Howe,
Yeah.
Dominic Murphy, kahit sino pa ilagay mo sa akin dun. Sa akin kasi, I will just initiate. The thing I learned early on is I will initiate the conversation. I know a little about the sport, but the expert is really the analyst. Pipilitin ko yung analyst para to say more, to speak more. Eh, kinito minsan walang problema yung speak more. Loaded yun.
Yeah.
Baon yun. Si Dr. Naman, Rickson, labas mo yung kaalaman mo dun sa basketball. Kung former players ang kasama mo, labas mo yung experiences nila. Um, that is to me the formula that I think I have used through the years and the constant evolution is lalo na when I'm attend a new sport. I ask endless questions. No araw, sabi daw nila, you shouldn't ask questions. It was really a dumb comment. Because often, I'm thinking of the viewer always. So if, let's say, you do gymnastics, why does Carlos Yulo, why does he have to score this much in a particular event? Because he's gunning for the overall title, then the analyst will explain why, explain all the moves. I don't know all the moves from a Maltese to Pakara or whatever, no, but at least you know the scoring system and you can guide the viewer. Football, for instance, hindi ko ambitionin mag-cover ng football. It's fun to watch, especially with the women's team nowadays doing
Yeah.
such things. No? I love listening to learning because I'm learning about the sport because I don't know many things about it. Yan, bakit yung upside rule? Diba? Ang
Mm.
pinagaling niya, Paulo de Rosario, you gotta teach us audience members what the offside rule is. Bakit hindi pwede yung pass break sa football, for instance? Why does it always have to be in the corner? Little thing. which is fascinating, no? Kasi it's the world's most popular sport. Uh, I have no intention, wala akong ambition i-cover yun. Pero,
Hmm.
ako panoorin.
Yeah, yun nga yung mahirap din. You need to like change the way. Like now sa PBA, pag PBA rush ka siguro or Smart Giga Play or TV5, like you also need to change yata. Like kailangan yata mas Tagalog pag TV5 and then pag
Kasi
PBA rush mas.
stats prove, no, that the bulk of the PBA audience is still male, and it's not a sexist position because the
Yeah.
reality, 60% of the audience is male, and they come from the BCB audiences, no, which is the middle income families, and mostly people who watch the game together with other people in a neighborhood, for instance. You know? Merong maraming nanonood sa Smart Liga because of traffic, because of the shift in watching. People tend to look for streaming, um, and there's a tendency to look for it for free in the future. Baka hindi na for free yan, ano? Kasi there are certain expenses that have to be covered. So I've tried each one, ano? Radio, TV, even Smart Liga. I've done uh, volleyball, the PBL coverages on Smart Liga. It's fun because you don't have to dress up, you don't have to
Yeah.
look at pa-OV on TV. And you know there's somebody listening. Iba ang call, ah. Kasi you can't go banana screaming. When you do UAAP or PBA, it's alright to use your voice and shout like crazy. But then you realize sa smart gig, yung nakikinig, naka-headphones, baka magulat. Pagka biglang may pumasok na 3-point shot at the basket, kuminsan, umisigaw ka sa middle of the game. Nagugulat sila. May nagsabi nung, when I was still on Twitter, a suggestion was not to scream like banana scream. So when I know I'm not screaming, I medyo manage na kunti ang energy.
Yeah, how about naman with the analyst? You mentioned that sila, Sir Kinito, like I've had him here na twice on my podcast kasi I enjoy also listening to him. Pero yeah, you mentioned pag siya yung analyst, hindi mahirap siya pa-expound ng mga topics or yung mga gustong pag-usapan. And then you have others like Andy Howe and Dominic Uy. Pero how about the newer generation then current players na nagiging analyst then? So for you as an anchor, how do you change or how do you alter your style to fit the also the analyst and make them speak or maybe make them say the right things then?
Good point. My working principle is keep opening doors. Halimbawa, no, yung former player, let's say first time, although may practice yung simulation na tinatawag
Yeah,
natin,
yeah.
you have to sit down. No? For instance, yung mga volleyball players, um, you make them relax, asking them questions, make them explain. Kung minsan ang tendency ng mga new analysts, they end up watching, they
Mm.
forget they're on TV, then yeah, the Philippine players, I make a joke or recall their playing years. And then, no, yung UST players, Carmela Tuna, tell her, ask her, oh, yan, tinamaan sa mukha. Gano'n ka kapit you know this as a former basketball player, I'm sure you should play nowadays. Pag tinamaan ka ng basketball sa mukha, masakit, may sting. Tigas talaga yung leather ng basketball. Pag tinamaan ka ng volleyball, hindi masyado malakas. Depende sa palo. Um,
Oh.
ask the player, what's it like? Then you ask about the rules. You ask about the nuances of the rules. Then, during timeouts, you encourage them. Ito, tutulungan ka rin ng production. No? Meron silang mga stats. Um, before you go on the air for 2 hours, ano, ang daming preparation. Like, it's so obvious when you haven't been watching. I won't mention names. There's some people in my business, other networks as well, halata mo, they don't watch the games, or most of the games that they're covering, of the league they're covering, which is unfortunate. I think when you're covering a league, you should try to watch as many games as possible. Finito and Dr. J are so industrious. Dr. J has watches all the games. You won't catch him flat-footed not watching a particular game. Sports lover talaga. So, um, my principle is keep opening doors. There have been good ones, and there have not been some so-so ones through the years. Depende na sa kanila kung gusto nilang gawing career ito. Ako, they think I have a magic wand that I can make everybody else as brilliant in television or radio. But sa akin, it's also important that you do the information because I can't carry the ball. I'm just a point guard on the air. I just pass it to you. I need you to shoot.
Yeah, yun nga yung ano, masaya din, as a, siguro kung analyst masaya sila 'pag ikaw yung kasama nilang first
I hope
first
so.
job. Yeah, kasi siyempre mas confident ka sila na 'pag nagkamali siguro sasaluhin niyo ho or yun 'pag medyo speechless sila or they're, still not confident of what to say, I guess you'll
It,
help
it,
them.
it doesn't go away, no? Kahit naman si Pinito at si Dr. J, ay, let's say, time out, no? Kaya kagabi, sabihin ko gabi, sabihin ko kay Pinito, balikan mo yung tournament format kasi wala, may league tuners tayo. Hindi nila alam ang meaning nitong tournament na ito. Saying to me, it's a standalone tournament, hindi ko ba Olympics in the World Cup. Um, and I'll admit to you, know, one of the hardest problems is always is the Philippine basketball team or Filipino boxer. It's the hardest coverage ever. Kasi one, when you enter it, bias ka na eh. Bias ka na kaagad.
Yeah.
Covering a Filipino. So give that up right away. Unlike, let's say, you to UAAP, regardless of your school, no? I know so many friends from the side and I understand the rivalry to the point that I can um, check my own loyalty while understanding the situation of the rival. Meaning to say, ang attitude, like yung sinasabi ko Dominic, alam mo, tayo, with those of us who have been through the academics, we understand this. And we wish each other well. We'll kill each other, of course. You know? But at the same time, we don't want it na yung ating rival ay inaapakan, hindi natin gusto na ina-appeal, gusto natin competition. So, the Philippines is always the hardest to cover. In 35 years of doing, even last night I said, this is always so hard as telling the producers all around it. That this is the hardest coverage. It's loyalties. And you want every basket from the Philippines to spread.
Yeah. You mentioned din rin kanina po that you do sometimes raise your voice 'pag exciting and you listen to this crowd roar or yung 'pag naka-clutch shot or yung mga half-court shots. Pero you, when did you learn or how did you learn din yung pagiging progressive or yung pagiging like yung hindi 'pag first quarter pa lang sobrang galala kasi mahirap yun na mahirap i-sustain yung energy for the whole game. Like kahit anong sport, how do you learn that din on the process?
Interesting question. Sa akin, the first quarter is establishing quarter. Wala nagpatayan ng ganyan. Now, the second quarter, kung basketball ang basis natin, second quarter, sino yung lamang, bakit sila lamang, bakit they are doing something, o kung tabla, what are they both doing very well or not doing well. Third quarter is, should they make their move now? May hahabol ba? And perhaps that is the trick Ginebra has done through the years, is that they know when to turn on the rally button and where their rally drops. Sa UAAP naman, we have no problem, you know why? Kasi pati turnover is something. Pati turnover, and diba, and I keep telling the young analysts, let's say, they should manage their turnover. There are turnovers in the college game because they're young people trying to learn how to do the game and they will make mistakes. Ano ba, no? Nagsisigawan ng mga tao. At these are young men and women actually trying their best and they will make mistakes. That's why sport is also sad. Now, pag pumunta ka naman sa pro, may expectation. Kaya now yung decision making ng pro. Ang masyado naman, hindi na pwede yung mga mistakes na ginawa ng college. Grow up ka na. Diba? Grow up ka na. Saka your game has to improve. Yeah. So, yung mga nuances na gano'n, pipilitin mo sa analyst mo, titignan mo yun. Ako kasi, just to share a secret, no, when I was starting out, the bottom dwellers who studied in both of me and Lasal, and he was our owner there, understood the game very well. And lesson is, it's always looked at the macro level. Macro, which team is ahead, which team is behind. Micro, who are the players doing it? Why is this happening? Where is the crowd like this? What are the consequences? Ako lagi kong binabalikan also, begin to hold the interest of the audience. What is the consequence? What is the importance of this game? survival. But kaya kahapon, yung Blackwater Rainier tayo, ano yun, ordinary viewers, follower, ridiculous viewers. It's important to do. So that's your job, to hold their interest. It's like writing, di ba? Like the
Yeah.
lead, the second paragraph, the third paragraph, where does the post come in? There's a structure that you learn. And hopefully it becomes second skin as you go through the different.
I wanted to ask about your Olympics stint in Tokyo, since that's one of your biggest accomplishments that I've heard. And I know you covered the Olympics then before, and here in this Olympics, it was special also because of the conditions and the restrictions of COVID-19. So maybe you could share the experience of being there and covering all the sports internationally.
Okay. One of the you might it might not sound right, to those who are listening to us right now. One of the easiest among the three, would have to be the Olympics. Why? Because if you don't have a very good team, the Filipinos don't last very long in the tournament. However, in Tokyo, it's special given the conditions and everything because we had two boxers going for gold.
Yeah.
We had Tim Marshall winning bronze medal and the high Olympian Diaz experience. I was beginning to think maybe in my lifetime, you guys out there were young, but you would have probably seen gold medals in the picture from Carlos Yulo and Jay Jenner. But I was beginning to doubt whether that experience would ever happen in my lifetime. Unfortunately, rather, it happened, no? To hear the national anthem played in the Olympics while being it's going to be a special blessing. That's why the Singaporean is doing our celebration saying, I'm doing this because it happened to us 4 years before in Rio. The Olympics is thrilling because when you're there, you feel actually it's more compared to everybody else who's doing trying to do a job. Um, the SEA Games is the hardest because there are Filipinos until the very last day of the competition.
Oh, okay.
Gaya nun sa basketball, natalo tayo sa Indonesian Destroyer. So, the international experience is thrilling and fun to travel with your colleagues, fun to watch sports. Actually, nung Olympics, I told Carlo we didn't get to see that many live events because it was big. We have to see a basketball game. It's far from our bedroom, where we were working. Ginawa namin ng paraan. We watched Slovenia against France. And,
Wow.
came to the conclusion. Si Luka Doncic, tatlo. Pogi talaga, magaling talaga, angalero talaga. So, those are the two things that came to mind and they lost in that game to
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, yun. The Olympics is probably thrilling, but sa akin ang challenging in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and then that's a great experience hearing you behind the mic across all the sports there in the Olympics. But how about what with the conditions there? Like, yeah, it's only calling the games were different, but then with the COVID restrictions, did it make it more difficult for you, or was it basically the same since you were? I think you were the one only on the broadcasting center, like hindi ka pumupunta like sa iba-ibang area like Gretchen or Pau del Rosario.
Gretchen and Power are roving reporters.
Mm.
Actually, challenge sa kanila. Many times, baka hindi na kwento, they were not allowed to cover many areas and events because of limitations on the number of people that could enter certain venues. One, the golf tournament. They're trying to follow the Filipino there, but um, may limitations on the number of people who could go to the golf tournament. It's quite far from the center in the broadcast center. Second, yung Filipino rower. So that was challenging. My job was fun in the studio because I could see all the events happening at the same time because I was working for Dentsu Broadcasting in both TV5 and Signal. When I had my Dentsu assignment, I would do all these international sports. I mean, all English, no names, no nothing, and just do the telecast. And when you do TV5 and Signal, you convert to English Tagalog kasi audience ko, Filipino ang nanonood, no? So, masarap din. Nagawa ko na yung Yung 2000 Olympics, yung pwede ko sa lahat ng venue, ako good ako dun. Basketball sa una, sa volleyball sa gabi, boxing the next day. It's training to be there. But nowadays, the off-tube opportunity to, as it happens, in a studio, this is trading again. Same skill set, same skills ang kailangan.
Yeah. How about po with the researching that you needed to do since you covered plethora of sports? How would you tell the audience na gaano kahirap mag-research? Lalo na pag yung mga events na hindi ka gaano ka-familiar with like the Olympics. Meron mga names or countries or yeah, sports na hindi mo masyadong napapanood compared to here pag PBA or PVL. Like you know that at the you know all the players there, you know all the teams and coaches naman.
Dati, napakayabang ko, I used to take that for granted. I used to take those pronunciations dati. Walang problema sa akin, Russia against Yugoslavia finals. I think that we were able to do that problema. There was no social media. And people, they wanted to watch these things at the Betamax or VHS tapes. But now, with the explosion of social media, everybody knows how these things are pronounced, uh, what tournaments they're in. Is the audience smarter? Yes. Is the audience more critical? Yes. In the BNL games recently, namatayan ako ng internet sa bahay. So there was no time to check the pronunciation. There was a bit by obviously a volleyball fan who said, hindi ang nagsinet yung pronunciation. And I apologize to the fan. And I said, nawalan ng internet, so we try to do my best with that. I don't take it for granted now. I used to just breeze through it. Nowadays, when I'm not sure, I ask it. Lalo na, pag natapat sa Thailand, Cambodia, patay pa din. Mabilis lalo na basketball. Pagka slower sport, may chance to catch up. But if you do volleyball and down, Thailand, against Indonesia, mahaba ang pangalan. Ang fascinating na natutunan ko, the Thais don't like to have the same names as everybody else. They try to be as unique as possible. And that's fascinating to learn about Thai culture. It's challenging. Now, yung preparation, halimbawa, yung Asian Games in 2018 sa Jakarta, kasama ako ng alam ko sa handle. Okay. Yun ang masarap sa present generation. Manunod ka ng walang kakapusan ng kailan. May ginagawa ko sa hotel room mo. May water na handle game or water polo. It's all there on the internet. It's advantageous and I'm sure the next generation of course that is. I'm so blessed to have all this material for them. So important.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think the preparation sometimes yung generation na to, hindi nila nakikita yung essence or importance din kasi, you know, feeling nila memorize na nila at lahat ng nangyayari, lalo na pag yung sports na pinanonood nila dito. Pero I think it's still very essential. So yeah, moving on to that, yung maganda rin pag-usapan is yung sinasabi nila na parang evolution nga, since my social media na you mentioned that there's Twitter and then yung say, I don't know if you know that po, yung si Draymond Green, he says like new media versus old media. I don't know why he started that. Na yung new media is yung mga analysts, like former players like him, JJ Redick, or current players pala, like CJ McCollum. So ikaw naman, as someone who was part of the media before and even now, why would you say it's still important to have those principles or yung mga lessons na natututunan mo from the old media, even if you could say that there's a new media na yun may mga analysts na like Draymond.
Uh, I think when you are in the public domain, it is a commitment to be as good as you can possibly be, not necessarily professional, as good as you can possibly be. So when I do a broadcast, I think of my audience where they are, my behavior, and some the bahay sila, yung streaming sa ilang ano ang kailangan nilang malaman. Ano ang tinatanong nila? What are they thinking of? That's my social media, and I'll admit to you, no, I took my Twitter account where the recent toxicity. Um, I don't want to go deep into it, but my I used to enjoy engaging with friends, trying to discuss some which I don't mind if they agree or disagree. I like it when they agree with me. If they disagree, that's it came to a point it became disrespectful. When it began to become disrespectful, like, no, but it came to a point that people who were depending on me, away ng mga people with it. Diba? This is not healthy discussion. I took out my physiotherapy. Sabi ko, siguro, I come to a point in my career that I throw out what I know out there. I do my best. Then I will listen to feedback. It comes from producers. Nung araw kasi, letter to the editor yan. Or kaya, if you're too young to remember Pinoy Exchange. Pinoy Exchange was a forum where people discuss everything. Even to the point na, who are the best teachers in Lasal? Who are the A-able teachers in Ateneo? Ang weird na. And I know nowadays that chaplain for every suitable issue or sport. Um, so sa akin, I come to the conclusion, I just keep my Facebook private and I'll keep um, my discussions to people. But ako sa Facebook kasi I don't want people to disagree with me kasi I know the people who are disagree. So I came to the conclusion baka social media is not for me because of its specific. Pati yung Instagram ko, na-discover ko. It came to a point na, ano na may pag-okay. Yun lang. Yun lang nag-iis ko din sa Twitter is the discussion with people who seem to be passionate about the sport, and sports. Will there be another um, platform that can be less toxic? Ang suggestion sa lahat ng online is to find what I know as echo chambers. No? People who share your content. There's a site, no? It's called the basketball court. Those are guys. And it's well managed because even if they're dissenting opinion, bawal ang burahan, bawal ang awayan, share your opinion. So sa akin, that's fine with me. And just today, because of what happened last night in Lebanon, there's so many opinions. They're asking me, I don't have all the answers. But at least there's people going fighting with each other. Hawa ako dito ma-agree sa akin, hindi naman nila kasalanan. So maybe yung iba, no, ito ang ginagawa nila, inaaway nila. It's not their nature. Hindi ko nature. Kaya, hindi ko type mo sa pagkakawin in the public. So, I don't mind. I always believe that Filipinos sports standard are some of the most talented in the world, lalo na in basketball and volleyball and hockey. And they know what they're talking about. But there are also some people who are quite toxic on social media. Probably that's not it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's why even me, I don't cover like the games. I don't like. I'm not. I mean, I'm only a sports writer, but then I don't like read the comments then of the people kasi wala rin naman ako natututunan dahil puro murahan lang doon or insulting comments lang madami. Konti lang yung talagang may mga matututunan ka like you need to really filter it or kaya mo mentally like to like just
That's a good
ignore the
point.
yeah.
Meron talagang magagaling. Meron talagang magagaling. And meron talaga yung nuances of rules. Kung minsan, hindi ko naiintindihan yung certain rules. I will ask for clarity. But yun lang, now, I will now try to look for other platforms that can serve as a parang sounding board. Ayoko din naman ng sounding board na ang galing-galing ko palagi. Hindi naman perfect. For a while, Twitter was okay because there were some good comments actually that were helpful in my career. But the toxicity of late um, was a little too much. Lalo na when they were fighting um, the people who were trying to defend. I thought
Yeah, for sure. Yun nga yung ayaw mo mangyari. Kasi Twitter is supposed to be positive. But then even like, I know basketball, like volleyball fans, like kahit sobrang yung magiging passionate nila na dadala sa Twitter na minsan di na nag-iisip. More on emotion na talaga sila mag-tweet. Kaya yun yung
very
mahirap.
since Diego, like you said today, um, the Philippine national team, it's always the basketball team, it's always a hot topic. It's a trending topic to the youth, the present. And sometimes when I was with from British broadcasters in the Olympics, and they were telling me that's nothing compared to how chaotic football is in England, in other countries. Away sila about the coach, the players, the policies. We're in the same boat. We love the sport so much. We want to win, and it's never easy to cover the Philippines. It's fun when we win, but it's also painful. Like for instance, ito lagi ko example ko. In 2002, also the Salem missed those two free throws.
Mm.
The game against Korea, and Korea hits a 3-point shot at the back. If there was social media at that time, I would probably be barbecued because I simply said at the end of the game, Rosella misses the free throw. So and so Korean player shoots the three. Paso, Korea goes to the final. Somebody told me that there is some criticism that I should have been more uh, and I could have empathized more with the
Yeah.
Filipino. What then more can you do? You just the free throws. Takbo. Diba? Like nung huling Olympics, no? Nung natalo si Mexico. Some critics said that I should have been more encouraging yung pagkatalo ni yung pagkapanalo ni silver medal. But let's make one thing clear. You win in boxing, an individual sport, if you win the silver medal, most likely you lost your last fight. Most likely you lost your last fight. It's hard to win any medal in the Olympics. So, in hindsight, yes, big thing yung pagkapanalo ni Mexico Peso, try to paalam. And I even told Nesty Protection in the PSA Awards, sabi ko, nalungkot talaga ako. Sorry sir. Sabi ko, walang sorry. You tried very hard. Um, our athletes do so much for us. Then, tayo naman to the comment. Um, our world of sports has had an interesting added layer of social media. Some are good, some are toxic, some are okay lang, diba? But times want to express themselves. Sana maging respectful in this work, but I'm wishful thinking too lang.
Yeah. How about your thoughts on these athletes or even like sa NBA ko masyado napapansin na yung ibang NBA players, minsan pag kunwari yung mga players na hindi naglaro ng basketball na at a high level, feeling nila they can't really talk about these certain topics compared to kumari si JJ Redick or si Charles Barkley yung nagsalita since before they were playing in the NBA level mas pinapakinggan daw dapat sila. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Good question. Barkley and Cyrillic, recently Cyrillic got into trouble. Ano? Kasi he commented ng mga kalaring back to him, the legend of the game. For plumbers lang, hindi galing ng player. Si Barkley naman always gets into trouble. It would not be fun. It would not be Charles Barkley if he didn't get into fun and made those guarantees. Diba? It's fun. He's using who he is to entertain fans. If you don't see it that way, then I think you're taking life a little too seriously. But there are fans who do take their sport very seriously. So the question is, um, yung bang hindi ganun ka-hindi ang experience, may karapatan. Actually, lahat meron. Now, they will say, si Barkley walang karapatan kasi hindi siya nag-champion as an NBA player. He played in the finals. Diba? He played in the finals. He knows what to do. Then he's learned how to deal with it. Pag pinutok siya, doon sa NBA on TNT, meron isang episode doon, Champions Room. Di ba?
Yeah, yeah.
Si napasok si Kane Smith, si
Yeah.
Juliata, tapos siya hindi pinapasok. And he was laughing like crazy and he's learning how to deal with it. No? Noong 1992, nung you read about the Dream Team, hindi nyo ma-gets. Kasi si Larry Bird, ano doon alaskador doon Ay, shot, go away. This is championship. This is just a discussion among champions. Diba? So, they have to live with it. Sa akin, okay lang. Yung mga NBA players, yung former or yung average player, okay lang. Uh, Nagpapapansin din siguro sila. Gusto nilang magkaroon ng broadcast career o kaya social
Mm.
media follow lang.
Yeah, how about this topic now, or this concept of having these podcasts like what I have now, or these other like YouTube channels, or how, or even shows virtually. Like these people have evolved. Like you used to have sports page na, yun nga, hindi na nga natuloy in the middle of the pandemic. I used to watch that din po. Like, what's your thoughts on those kinds of shows? Kasi dati traditional lang na meron yung interactive, yung sa active TV nyo, there was like show there na pre-game and post-game. Puro ganun lang. Tas ngayon, nag-evolve na yung way of content or sharing of opinions on sports. What's your thoughts on that?
Ako, there are a lot of good, well-produced, I guess it in a number of podcasts, and I never say no to these invitations, because there's a genuine effort. It's hard. I did a podcast a long time ago, not for sports, but I came to realize how much work goes into it. Diba? Uh, those who do videos, YouTube, may problema yung iba about the rights, because that's another
Mm.
altogether. Pero ang tsaga nila, no? I mean, ang tsaga nila gumawa ng mga videos. They have a lot of time, huh? I'm amazed that they have that much time to do these things. Um, okay lang. Bakit? Although meron mga, may mga toxic din, diba?
Yeah.
May mga toxic din. One of the sites naman pag I mean, PBA news can be very, 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 uh, hindi lang toxic, very personal. And there was a, natawa. Sinabihan ako ni Nico kanina, sabi, inaanak ko rin yung sa kasagan. Hindi na yung complete pa din kasi masyadong toxic. One time, a producer of ours shared this meme that appeared there. Napaka-sarap daw maging Sev Sarmenta. And the pictures that we put there were my Facebook photos with the volleyball. Para namang, yun ang risk, Akala nila, napakasarap na pala. One, some are, because I taught in Ateneo for the longest time, Eliza Valdez, former student, Gretchen was a former student. I covered Rachel and Max for the longest time. And then it's Gretchen after. It's risky, and Gretchen and the other female celebrities or those celebrities. Had bilib ako sa kanila, yung mga babae, natutunan. Mas marunong sila makipag-away, on social media. I have no guts to do that. Probably I'm too old to be waging battles against people I really don't see. Uh, yung iba, bilib ako. And they manage to survive social media.
Yeah, how about po with the like yung mga podcasts that I was talking about? Like sila Draymond, like as a current player, there were times na hindi na siya magsasalita dun sa in the front of the national media or yung local media ng Golden State. Then he'd just rather talk on his podcast and para walang control, walang restrictions. He could say whatever he wants.
I guess
So
so.
ikaw naman, like, yun nga yung isa sa mga major changes ng generation na to na may ganong style of trying to convey your message or share your thoughts. So would you say that you would agree with that then, or do you have other sentiments in terms of
Uh,
that?
I think I think if you are in the public domain, you have a responsibility to open uh, for halimbawa, like the invitation of others, uh, as long as I know where it's coming from, yes, I will do it. Whether the digital media or with the time. I think we still have to deal with the mainstream media. Like for instance, the interview. As long as my network TV5 allows me to do so, the questions belong to GMA or other networks, GMA, other high speed, they need my opinion. No? Si Draymond kasi, lightning in a bottle, di ba? Nakakatakot siya, di ba? Kahit ano maglaro siya sa court, ganun siya, opinionated siya. Parang it's an itch he has to scratch. Kailangan iangal ko to. Parang sino ka doon? Panoorin mo maglaro. Diba? Kala niya lahat ng drive niya sa basket, foul siya. Napaka-foul siya. Natatawa naman.
Yeah. Yun nga po yung kakaiba with Draymond. Like, some people really dislike him, but some really love him. And yeah, I mean, I like how he plays, pero sometimes nga masyado ng harsh or masyado ng, alam mo yun, yung may sinasabi lang siya para may masabi yung mga tao about what he said.
Ako naman sinasabi niya, to gain followers. Diba? Some people like to be controversial intentionally. There's one
Mm.
um, very active blogger bang tawag doon, who likes to steal the cauldron and dito sa PTA circus. So, minsan personal na di ba?
Oh,
Dealing
yeah,
with
yeah.
types of players, no? Um, don't want to get into that. Yung mga personal love affairs,
Yeah, yeah.
diba? Relationships ng players, it's parang privado na. Oh, you can argue back. Kasi public domain, they have a commitment to the audience. Ako hindi. Malas lang nila na ang dahil incident sa Calvin Cueva, um, apologize na siya sa wife na mukhang okay na sila. But you don't have to get into that kind of stuff, di ba? And other people like to do that. People can do it. Pero sa akin, look, I have to deal with these players at the cover. My concern is that they're basketball. Di ba?
Yeah, for sure. And I agree nga po na ibang vloggers. Like me personally, I'm not a fan nga of vloggers. Kasi yung iba like cloud chasing lang in my opinion. Like yung mga YouTube titles nila or na intro nila para talagang panuurin mo sila. Pero pag yung substance na yung titingnan mo, you'd rather listen to a podcast of a personality talaga in sports media kasi mas may matututunan ka kaysa yung mga ganun na alam mo yun, yung alam nila kasing may magki-click and panonoorin sila, pero hindi wala ka na masyadong matututunan from them. That's why I don't know, that's just my thoughts on it. But then, um,
Perspective.
one thing that I wanted to ask was, yeah, you mentioned that you were close to these volleyball players like sila Eliza, Gretchen, and Rachel Andakis, and you've been working in the industry for so long. So, how would you share to the audience and also to me na it's the important to have a great network in the broadcasting industry and have that good reputation nga na you're easy to work with kasi you will have different analysts every game, every sport, iba yung pag work mo, yung producers, iba lahat. So how important is having that work ethic?
Very, very important. Ang aking guiding principle aside from the analysis na opening doors, always be fair. Halimbawa, no, a certain player is not performing well, you have to understand. Um, ang criticism na dapat is in the context of the game. It's in the context of the game. May injury ba yan? May iniinda ba yan? May sugat ba yan? Um, when you get a chance to talk to the players, uh, how much can you reveal to them? Yeah. Ito hatin ba? Ito ba personal? Pero halimbawa, may player, inaaway-kaaway yung coach. Ito may sasabihin, ayaw, this guy is not being used because he has a running conflict the coach has it. What I have learned also is one, Coach Joe defined one story that we commentators should never, and I say it out loud, never question the judgment of the coach who is in the game. Kasi halimbawa, binantuloy yung isang player, diba?
Oh,
Galing sabihin, paano hindi ginagamit yun? May rason. Baka hindi
yeah,
sila practice, baka hindi
yeah.
naman sa ulo. Maraming dahilan yun. Yung judgment ng coach is something you have to respect. Now, yung mga personal lives ng players, ako yung handset yan. Pagka well-known publicly, halimbawa, great isang player, natapos. That's not for the broadcast. That's not something for the broadcast. If the bloggers and the people who do these things think it's good for content, sure, they're in it. But for me, I don't think that's important in the context of the game.
Yeah. And in connection to that nga, and you having a great rapport with these athletes and these other people that you work with. So when did you start this passion of teaching like this younger generation na talagang you wanted to, teach them also with the sports broadcasting? Because I know you've been a teacher like in Ateneo for many years now, but specifically in sports broadcasting kasi like when I listen to the younger generation, they always say na you're one of their mentors, ganon, you're open to teaching them, ganon. How did you
Yeah.
have that? When did you start that?
Um, I offer, una, no, yung so-called mentoring, I offer suggestions only when asked or when talagang kailangan mo to the person I offer suggestions. Um, yung sa mga sports workshops, I give back because when I was starting, some very senior people, even si Andy at saka si Benito, the detention, the Canada, the International, these people were the lead generation where they knew helped me help my member who is starting one. And my attitude, my view is that I will do the same to those who are starting one, those who are struggling, those who want to learn. Only if they want to. Kung ayaw, wala kang magawa. Diba? Sa akin kasi, if generosity can be shared, it will probably be a better uh, world that we live in. You'll find out, despite um, many differences, challenges with the guys in the sportscasting business, it's quite generous. People don't know. Even guys in the rival networks, for instance, uh, it's nice to see them succeed. So my attitude is we're not the stars. The players, the team, the leagues, these are the stars. Tayo wala tayo. So that's sulat ng tayo. Uh, the minute we're out of it, the sport continues.
Yeah, so ayun, to wrap before we wrap up this episode po with the DVD show with you, I wanted to ask you a few general questions that I ask all my other guests then before they go. So one is, I know for sure that you could relate to it po, since in the bubble and even now with the Britney Griner situation, yung mga NBA and WNBA players, they're very vocal about social and political issues, and dung sa Philippines, like the athletes or the sports personalities weren't as vocal before with these issues, because yeah, they various reasons, like ayaw lang nila kahit knowledgeable naman sila, or wala, it's just a personal preference. Pero nitong elections and this pandemic na may mga issues sa social and politics, mas naging active sila in social media and using their platform. And you, I know po that you also voice your support for Lenny nung elections. So I wanted to ask your stance on it, na yung athletes or yung sports personalities on being vocal on social and political issues as well, and not just playing their sport or focusing on their broadcasting or sports media job.
Uh, it's a matter of choice. The players and some of the coach officials are probably restricted by alam naman tayo sa lalo na sa PBA, the corporate um, league, that there might be some restriction. It's also difficult. Each team might have some protocols that are followed about the treaty. I'm not privy to those protocols that they have. Uh, I don't mind. I think there are ways to express it without being blatantly vocal on social media. I think the volleyball players did a good job when we compared
Yeah.
to Lenny. And even those who supported other candidates also did a relatively good job supporting their own candidates. Hindi tayo, di ba, there are certain issues that probably we are not conversant with. Ako ang feeling ko in the Philippines, sometimes you will have to make a mistake before you understand that issue. Halimbawa, no, certain issues of ethnicity, gender, social justice. Um, some are conversant about it. And you, for one, will appreciate it. Yeah, people should not make the mistake for kay athlete, hindi ko lang alam. That's a great mistake to make. You'd be surprised that that's why many athletes become politicians. Because they have a better understanding of social issues. Ako, for example, I'm not surprised some athletes na elect direct positions, but may part sila ng tao. I think there are those who do activities for the community and do not necessarily belong to them. Meron dyan,
Mm.
do good jobs and they do not necessarily have to advocate for social media. For instance, I've always liked what Gretchen has done, donating bicycles. I'm pleased to talk to you about that. Donating
Yeah.
bicycles for people who need a bicycle for their life. Um, I immediately made my own donation to the program. That's a great idea. And it doesn't have to be, ewan ko, iba ba ang culture natin? Because yung mga Americans and other countries, go lang ng go. And I think
Mm.
and the Black Lives Matter thing is a little more um, pervasive and a very, very sensitive issue that certain issues have to be brought to the public light, which I don't fully understand.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Also, like, I also listen to them kasi parang minsan di ko nagigets din yung, I don't know, yung repercussions of that issue, or yung history. Lalo yung history, like, I really am learning it lang go on the fly, especially na, yun, ang dami nangyari nung hindi pa ako napapanganak. So I just continue to learn from that. So one question I'd want to ask is, what are the some sporting events that you would have wanted to call, like that you've watched lang on TV?
I think I will never do an NBA game. Wala na yung, the closest I did was in 2000 when I did the NBA players with Carter, with Simone. That's the closest I will do. But I lost out on the opportunities to be the Philippine broadcaster for the NBA. That's the only thing I really haven't done. Dati, no, I just wished for one Pacquiao fight in Las Vegas just to see what the whole of the world was about. And that's an honor to do that. Yung kababayan, smallest guy in the ring, yung nakaguluhan ng international media. I actually did um, three of them in the United States. And it was such a thrill. It's nakakapagod. That's one of the most tiring coverage in the arrive in the States, the same day you fly, the weigh-in is on Friday, um, the weigh-in I think is on Saturday. No, the weigh-in is on Friday,
Friday. Yeah.
Saturday, and then you leave right away. Then you're in the plane and you arrive back in Manila. It's Tuesday. So what I do sometimes is I will call on my cousins and they keep me here for a week. I think it's it's it's. I don't think we'll ever see another fight. Generational talents, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, well, I thought when you rank up like, yeah, you can do this. But yung maraming natingin, patay talaga. Hard talaga. Big mistakes in the public domain. Big part of humanity. But he tries very hard.
Yeah. So for the next question po, if you had the opportunity to have dinner with five people, dead or alive, who would you invite?
Fight, fight, dead or alive. Dapat pala pinadala mo person in advance. But I would love to have dinner with the guys that I don't see anymore in the problem. Broken down, Ronnie Quintana, and I would have wanted to meet Carlos Gonzaga and Placido. Those are the five people probably I would invite to dinner and get to talk sports.
Okay, okay. So for the final question po, since you know that I invite people lang po through social media, whether athletes or sports personalities, sino yung masasuggest niyo po na ma-invite ako rin dito sa The DVD Show to talk sports or to talk about their career din?
Really good question. The one you might be interested in Magoo Magdan. Magoo Magdan has a great story because he didn't succeed right away. He's had challenges because sometimes he thanks the tables and things which I think is absolutely crazy. Um, and he has his own podcast as well. He's, I can give you connection to him after. Then I think you should do a coach. Have you done a coach already?
Yeah, I've done a couple of coaches like who yun ba? Coach Tab, Coach Chot. Yeah, I've interviewed them already.
Okay? And those are the guys you talking to. You have great credibility. You've got these people visiting your show as well. Yun, some of the volleyball players would be fun for you, also, I guess. Um, Brendan Lasseter would be a great
Oh
uh,
yeah.
talk. Yeah, those are my suggestions.
Okay, so thank you so much again, Sir Seb, for joining me here on my podcast. And do you have any final message before you go?
Uh, I think we should enjoy this great time in sports. We have social media. We have, it's all at our disposal. All at our fingertips. Um, let's keep the discussion respectful. Let's pick up a fight.
Yeah.
It's not really necessary, but let's manage our passions as well, and let's hope for the best, especially for Philippine sports. Because we're in a very good time wherein we've already won a gold medal in the Olympics, and we've got great athletes, and only things can only be better. Thanks again for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you po. Is it okay if we take a picture before you go? Okay, I'll take it po from here. One, two, three. Okay, thank you so much again, Sir Seven. Thanks for see you soon, hopefully, and stay safe.
Okay, salamat.